Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben, wearing a black shirt today because someone got upset that I was wearing a white shirt last time because my skin is too pale, so here you go, looking all cute for you. Godzilla, the beast that has been keeping Japanese people in fear for nearly 70 years, has a new movie coming out, sandwiched between the new teen-targeted X-Men film and the epic cringe that's going to be Aladdin. They probably should have just combined the two and given Aladdin adamantium claws, and they'd have a box office smash. But anyway, Godzilla. We thought here at Generation Films we would be of some use to you all for once and rehash the history of the giant monster and the dark inspirations behind it. After all, Godzilla is not just a giant monster, but a symbol of a giant monster. As always, if you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We're here to fight the alien scum, so if you in any way care for the future of humanity, you'll not only hit that subscribe button, but the notification bell as well. The notification bell represents your hate for the Xenos. Okay, first off, let's remember that Godzilla wasn't the beginning of the mega monster film. The Japanese had inspiration for Godzilla from the US's own super beast, King Kong, which had been around since 1933. And in 1952, when a King Kong film was released in Japan and saw success, the Japanese movie company Toho Studios saw an opportunity. I've often pointed out on this channel how Western cinema rips off Asian film, but the same has happened the other way around since the beginning of the medium. Yes, the US has done its fair share of harm to Japan, but considering that we inspired Godzilla and that American hero Thomas Mayweather IV literally saved their country, they owe us their thanks as well. But I digress. Japanese film studios often stole from Hollywood. So before we delve into the thematic inspirations for Godzilla, we have to note that potential profit was a big part of it all. But more macabre inspirations led to the beast's rise as well. As the first Godzilla film debuted in 1954, you'll note that the horrors of World War II weren't long in the past. Japan had not only experienced the mass death of soldiers in the war, but the wiping out of entire cities thanks to US air raids and the dropping of the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Additionally, Japan in the 50s, fearful of war, was well aware of the rising tensions of the Cold War and nuclear proliferation. I got nuclear right. I got nuclear right. No country was really safe on a planet threatened by growing nuclear weapon stockpiles, the race to create more and more powerful weapons of mass destruction, and actual tests of nuclear bombs. More importantly to our narrative, people were scared of the effects of nuclear weapons and what radioactive fallout from nuclear tests could do. The first Godzilla film had images that reminded viewers of the Lucky Dragon incident, in which a Japanese tuna fishing boat was contaminated by nuclear fallout from a US thermonuclear test at Bikini Atoll in 1954 that not only resulted in a crew member death, but in contamination of the tuna. And so fear ran rampant through Japan of the possibility of a godlike weapon being created that could not be combated and that could cause monstrous mutations in animal life. And as the market always plays on the fear of the people, so too goes the movie industry. Toho Studios set about making a serious monster film with 1954's Godzilla, spending 60 million yen in doing so, which when adjusted for inflation and converted into US dollars comes to about a little bit more than $5 million in 2019, a big budget for a Japanese film back then. I didn't just calculate that, I looked it up on Google before. The product, of course, was Godzilla, or in Japanese, Gojira, a portmanteau of the Japanese words for gorilla and whale. This first film told the story of a hydrogen bomb test that transforms the ancient sea creature Godzilla into a giant radioactive beast that sends Japan into terror in the face of a loss of control of their destiny. A clear allegory for Japan's post-war position in the world, taking a spectator seat to the rising military superpowers of America and the Soviet Union. This film also began the first period of Godzilla films known as the Showa period, lasting from 1954 to 1975. This era started out with very serious Godzilla films, the kind where Gary Oldman plays Godzilla and you don't even know it. However, by the time the 1970s rolled around, the films were a bit dumbed down and targeted at preteen boys. This meant that much of the monster action in the films was more comical than scary, and the fighting more slapstick than chill-inducing. Eventually during this period, Godzilla would come to be the hero of the films and guardian of the Japanese people. It's also during this period that the themes that would go on to pervade Godzilla films would be introduced. Some of the more notable themes in Godzilla films are anti-Americanism, due of course to World War II and nuclear proliferation, the vulnerability of Japan due to the outcome of World War II, a distrust of authority due to the troubles the Japanese government had inflicted on Japan's people, and of course a fear of science and technology, as the progress of such and the rise of advanced weapons meant an unknown and bleak but really cool future. Meanwhile, in 1956, the 1954 Godzilla film had been re-edited for release in America as Godzilla King of the Monsters. The film had kept all of the action, but got rid of the social and political commentary. Thus, the Godzilla that Americans saw was simply a big dumb action film from the start. Funny enough, the film, which added in new scenes with American actor Raymond Burr, was released in Japan with subtitles and saw box office success. Additionally, 1965 saw the first co-produced production of Godzilla between America and Japan, with Toho and American studio UPA making Invasion of the Astro monster. The years 1984 to 1995 marked the Heisei period of Godzilla films. This era was marked by more serious Godzilla films targeted at adults. Of course, the films featured better special effects and sound given new technology. That said, the scripts and performances were still relatively weak, and action drove the movies. By the 80s, the usual Godzilla themes of the dangers of nuclear weapons, the vulnerability of Japan, and anti-Americanism had grown tired. After all, World War II was long in the past, and Japan was growing into a rich and prosperous nation full of Gundams. Thus, themes shifted heavily to the dangers of science, specifically genetics, and the moral questions that were arising with the advancement of that field. This meant that films went into more detail about Godzilla's background and creation story. And as Godzilla was returned to a destructive beast in these films, this helped give the movie's characters and even viewing audiences a platform to question the ethics behind the human actions that led to Godzilla's rise. It was in between the Heisei period and the next period of Godzilla films that the first huge Hollywood Godzilla blockbuster was released in 1998, starring Matthew Broderick. The film hit on classic themes of human irresponsibility and nuclear tests, leading to the rise of the devastating monster, but was not a good film in the eyes of critics or audiences, as it was bland and lacked any sort of compelling characters or plot. That said, this film did mark a huge leap forward for realism, as Godzilla was more lifelike than ever thanks to American special effects and technology. This film was followed by the Millennium period of Godzilla films, which lasted from 1999 to 2004. These films rebooted Godzilla to the original 1954 storyline and featured much improved narratives, dialogue, and effects. That said, they marked a return to targeting preteen male audiences. More importantly though, these films marked the first sign of the theme of Godzilla as a natural disaster. The film Millennium Godzilla included as a plot element the Godzilla Prediction Network, a system that operated to study Godzilla and predict its landfalls, akin to the way scientists might try to predict volcanic eruptions or earthquakes. Finally, the Reiwa period of Godzilla films marks the era of Toho's films from 2016 to the present. This is an era of IMAX 3D Godzillas where the action is awe-inspiring and puts audiences in the center of the terror. The Reiwa period also marks a complete shift to using natural disasters and the fear of such events as themes. This should be no surprise, as Japan has long been absent war and the world is mostly absent nuclear weapons testing thanks to international treaties. Except for North Korea, and they are probably the country most likely to create and be destroyed by Godzilla. But I digress. In 2011, Japan was devastated by the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant meltdown that followed. Okay, Japan might have already created Godzilla, but nonetheless, these horrific events created the inspiration for the Godzilla films that followed. Critics have also identified elements in the films of this period that seem to be satirizing Japanese politics and the ineptness of Japanese politicians to effectively manage the country. Godzilla can be seen as a metaphor for the idea that Japan will be destroyed from within rather than from without, as the Japanese government finds itself unable to stand up to foreign pressure and is burdened by an overly large and complex bureaucracy. The films do, however, also provide for a sense of nationalism, with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe himself even remarking on his observation of the positive way in which the Japanese self-defense forces are portrayed. Back overseas, of course, Legendary Pictures produced a Godzilla film in 2014, directed by Gareth Edwards. Edwards and his team set out to design a Godzilla as close to the original as possible, while of course making a more epic Godzilla film than ever before. The film used multiple natural disasters, including Hurricane Katrina and the 2011 Japan nuclear disaster, as inspirations for the destruction scenes in the movie. The result was one of the best and most successful Godzilla films ever made, which has now led to a second legendary Godzilla film coming out next week, and a third film, Godzilla vs. Kong, coming out next year. Though we hate to admit it out loud, humanity is entirely vulnerable. And Godzilla is the personified, or rather monsterified, form of everything we believe can destroy us, and represents humanity's vulnerability to countless forces, both natural and artificial, extant in reality. Which is exactly why we need to arm humanity and prepare for the coming alien invasion. Nonetheless, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe down below, and hit that notification bell. Don't just hit that subscribe button. We need you to hit that notification bell for the good of humans everywhere. I see you thinking about it. I need you to do it. Anyways, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.